Welcome back to Monday Mod Tips. I am Captain Xavier, and today, as the title would suggest, I'm going to be showing you how to remove pins. A lot of internal parts in Nerf blasters are held together with pins. Most bolt sleds and bolts are held together with a pin. All the hammer-primed blasters generally have pins that hold the hammer to the plunger rod. There's lots of applications where they've chosen to use a friction pin rather than screws or bolts or clips or whatever. And I've seen a lot of people break them because they don't know how to remove them properly. They end up either cracking their bolt sled or they crack the hammer on their hammer prime blaster. And so I'm going to show you how to remove it, and I'm honestly kind of surprised I hadn't done this one earlier. Now I'm going to show you the tools that I use that are by far the better option if you have access to them, but then I'll also show you the budget option so that you can do this with probably tools you already have, you just didn't realize that you could use them that way. So what I'm going to be using to actually punch the pin out is what's called a punch. It's a metal punch, center punch. It's used for marking metal so that you could drill it, or starting holes for nails or screws or anything like that. It's just very hard metal that comes to a very fine point. I am of course going to use a rubber mallet. This one actually just came with a set of shelves that I bought. It's light enough for what we're doing here. You're not going to crack anything or anything like that. And then a pair of pliers, which will probably come into play. And last but not least, I am going to be using a tiny anvil. Now this is the part that is definitely superfluous and you probably don't have, but you might have most of those other tools, possibly not a punch, but I can't imagine that you're into Nerf modding and don't have screwdrivers or pliers. So the key here is that we need to support the part that we're pounding the pin out of so we don't end up cracking it because all of the force is going into it rather than something else. And so that's where the anvil comes into play, because you can see there are these notches cut out, and that allows me to support the part that has the pin in it, but still allow the pin to be driven through. The other key thing that you need to understand is that the pin is not symmetrical. One of the two sides of the pins is almost only going to be perfectly plain and round and smooth, and the other side is going to have some kind of knurling. Either it'll be a checker pattern like you see on the punch here, or it'll be straight grooves or barbs or something that is what is holding the pin in place. It's what's creating the friction that holds the pin in place. And you need to figure out which side that is, because you want to pound the side with the knurling out this way. You don't want to try to pound the knurling all the way through, because it will chew up the material as it goes. It'll be much harder. You'll probably end up breaking something. And the only way to figure that out is to pound it part of the way and see, is the side that's coming out got the knurling or not? Or start pounding it, and if it's really, really difficult to get it out, that's probably the wrong direction. So in this case, I happen to know that this side has the knurling because I tested this beforehand. And so we're going to put it onto our anvil so that it is supported. And it's easier with more extra hands, but you can do it with one just by holding it in place with your hand like so. Supported on where the hole is, and then we're going to use the mallet and lightly tap it out. And once it's about that far out, it's probably not being held in very strong anymore because the knurling has now been pounded out, and we can just pull it out easily. Now, if I can get it to focus, which I might not be able to do, you can see how one side is smooth and the other side has the lines and the grooves, and that's what's giving it friction to hold the actual pin in place so it doesn't just fall out when you turn the blaster sideways. So, putting it back in, you go the exact opposite way. You're going to put the smooth side in first, push it down as far as you can just with your hand, and then use your center punch to push it down the rest of the way. And you might not even need to use the hammer at this point. It might just push in easily like it did right there. Now, center punches are available at any hardware store as well as Amazon, and they're not very expensive. But if you don't have access to one, you probably don't have access to a mini anvil. What can you use instead? Well, you can in fact get away with just using your pliers, a finishing nail, and your screwdriver. Now we're going to use most pliers, not all pliers, but most pliers are going to have this hollow here, this cavity where the wire cutter section is. And that is what we're going to use as our section to pound down into that will still support the shell. We're then going to use our finishing nail as our punch, and then the screwdriver will actually have enough mass to punch out our pin. And you can take it out and put it right back in again. Using your screwdriver, you should be able to push it in. If not, you can support it and use your nail and pound it in again. But that's the budget option: a finishing nail, pliers, and a screwdriver. The vital part is the supporting it against something that you can drive the pin down into. If you just had this here and started pounding on it, there's a good chance you're going to end up cracking your bolt sled, and you're definitely probably going to crack your hammer shot parts if you don't have something that's supporting the shell as you pound the nail through it. You also very definitely want to make sure that you're not trying to pound the knurling all the way through the part, that the knurling is coming out. And that you put it in the opposite way, smooth side first, and then drive the knurling down into the plastic. So that is how you can easily remove a pin. There are other techniques that use more fancy tools. You could use a vise or something along those lines, but this is the easiest, and it's how I do it. So hopefully this was helpful to some of you, and thank you guys for watching.